Well, hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is business strategy consultant and best-selling author, Mr. Noah Fleming. If there were a proven scientific formula for building customer loyalty, would you want your business to follow it? Well, of course you would. And today, Noah will share a proven scientific approach for turning customers into raving evangelists for your business. Pretty important stuff, and part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to share trusted advice that can transform your career, how you work and lead, and the way you live.
But stage 4 is what I call happily ever after. And this is where my first book, Evergreen, really picks up. It's after those 3 stages are complete, after you've actually had the customer buy from you, how do you now set the stage to bring the customers back, to get them to come back and do business with you again, to get them to refer others to you or to provide you with testimonials. To me, this is maybe not the most important stage, but it's certainly the stage that I like the most, because this is where you can bring customers back and you can create that level of evangelism and you can start to truly maximize customer value. So once you have the customer, once you've done business with them, once you've got them to this stage, the work is never done. So now they're in stage 4. So what do you do here? Well, in stage 4, you do what most businesses don't do. Most businesses, most organizations that I work with, they have a sales process. It might not be as defined as it should be, but for the most part, they've got one. Or they've got salespeople all running around doing their own thing, which is a whole other problem in itself. But for the most part, they have some processes in place. What most companies don't have is a retention process, a process for after the first sale to bring them back. And so there's a few things you want to consider here. First is that the sale is never done and that the relationship has just started, and now you have an opportunity to follow up. So I've done businesses with companies and then I don't hear from them for 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year. And quite frankly, they've missed the boat. They've missed the boat on trying to build that relationship. They've also missed the boat because they come back to me and they're trying to sell me something right away, as opposed to, again, delivering value, as opposed to evoking my imagination of the experience that I did have and reminding me of all those powerful associations and things that went on when working with them. So there's a few things here you want to do. First, you want to, again, have a retention process that you can build, that you keep in touch with customers. You want to start to think about what happens after the sale, how many times are we reaching out, when are we reaching out, in what context, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So with one client I was working with, they actually weren't doing much reach out at all, and they were trying to figure out what would be a good post-sale happily ever after experience for them. And with them, we came up with something we called the 90-45 rule. Now, this rule worked for their business, and it might be different for your business, but I'll explain what it was. They had set a simple rule that said no customer of ours could go 90 days without an in-person phone call. That was rule number 1. Every single customer in our database, in our client files that had done business with us had to have a phone call every 90 days, or at least some sort of touch point. And the 45 part of that was our top 10% of customers, whether it was by value or whether it was by another metric, frequency, recency, whatever, our top 10% of customers could go no more than 45 days without an in-person meeting with one of our sales reps. Now, again, this is an example of a very specific company where that rule made sense. This was a B2B client, and so they needed to make sure that these processes were in place, but that was it, the 90-45 rule. And so I've used this rule in other companies, but again, for your business, it might be a 3-7 rule. You might say that every customer needs to be talked to at least every 7 days, but every one of our top customers needs to be talked to every 3 days. Whatever it is, you want to start to think about what is the optimal follow-up frequency for your business. What makes sense? And there's a few ways you can think about this. Again, it might be getting that next purchase. It might be, again, building the relationship, you need to think about things like your buying cycle. So if a customer only buys from your business once every 18 months on average, and that's the typical buying cycle, then it doesn't make sense to be asking them to buy every 3 months. But it does certainly make sense to have a flow of communications, to have a flow of the things that you're asking for, the things that you're requesting. So in the book, what I call this is, well, there's a couple things. One is the appropriate reason. And the appropriate reason is a theory that I suggest in the book that says every customer touch point must have a reason. Every time you reach out, there must be an appropriate request and appropriate reason. So again, just like the example I just gave, if your customer only buys once every 18 months, it's not appropriate to be asking for the next sale 3 months into the first project. But you might have, for example, a referral request after the first month. You might ask for a testimonial after 6 months. And so if you think about a carousel, and you think about the old carousels that would go around the carnival with the animals that would move up and down, but they're also moving around, all your customers are going to be at different stages. But this is the importance of having a retention process, so you can start to think about, okay, when does it make sense to solicit a review? When does it make sense to ask for a referral? When does it make sense to upsell? When does it make sense to nurture the relationship? When should we just be following up? And when are they ready to buy? And these are the types of things that, again, not enough of us are thinking about, and we need to be thinking about, because this is how you build a retention process.